This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Friday, April 21st, 2023. And I have the awesome Manuel Fonau of Android Police. Hi, Manuel. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. Great that you have me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. We do have a bunch of new phones this week. This is exciting. It's been so slow with the news. There's been like one new phone every 2-3 weeks, and then they all kind of arrive at the same time. Of course, these are not like, super important phones, except for one, in my opinion. But it's kind of nice to kind of cover them. So let's start with the one that I think you're probably just as excited as I am about, right? The Xiaomi 13 Ultra. What are your thoughts on this crazy camera phone?
Absolutely. You're right about that. I'm really excited about this phone. So to start this off, I've reviewed the Xiaomi 13 Pro for Android Police, and that already blew me away, especially that nice Sony sensor. What was it called again?
IMX 989, I think.
Yeah, I think that was the one. And like its 1-inch sensor is just so amazing that I'm basically just really looking forward to getting my hands on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, especially with that aperture that's variable, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. I think there was a Samsung phone, like I think the S10 or something.
So actually, last year, the Mate 50 Pro had a variable aperture that was 5 settings.
Okay.
We had the Samsung, a while back. It was the Note series, I think, and maybe some of the Galaxy series, actually. I think it's the S10 and the Note 10.
I think so too. Like that was when I was like, basically, wow, now we're basically getting to DSLR kinds of levels. And of course, I mean, that's a long time ago at this point, and we're at a completely different space right now concerning smartphone photography. And the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is just, I hope, is going to be proof of that. Like I basically took a few of my product images for some reviews with the Vivo X90 Pro, which has the same sensor as the Xiaomi 13 Pro.
Yeah.
And basically nobody noticed until I told my editors about it. And it's kind of incredible, like how much we can use cameras these days on smartphones. And yeah, that's why I'm really excited about the 13 Ultra. I'm not, like, I would have to look into the exact specs once more, but like I think you can basically cover everything you would want to do on like a certain range with that phone, which is amazing.
Yeah, so it has basically 4 useful lenses in the back. There's an ultra wide, the main sensor, which has that IMX 989, and the variable aperture. And to be clear, that aperture is 1.9 and 4.0. So, you get that nice shallow depth of field and something a little bit more natural, maybe a little bit more like the smaller sensors used to give us in a phone. Because, that's the thing. I'm the same as you. I've had the 13 Pro. I obviously have the Pixel 7 Pro, which also has a large sensor, so has that shallow depth of field. The Galaxy S23 Ultra. I have, a bunch of phones that have shallow depth of field that I really like. If you look at all my reviews, I mean, forever now, even before those shallow depth of field, I was shooting them with phones, my review photos. So I've always been a big fan of kind of pushing the limits. We're going to talk about my Red Magic 8 Pro review later. If you want to look at some photos taken with Pixel 7 Pro, those are the ones, and they look fantastic. And I don't use fake blurring. I just use the natural bokeh of the sensor. So I'm a big fan of having that shallow depth of field, but at the same time, I also know there are situations when you want to capture the background, you want to capture a little more. And this is where these phones are a little hard right now. You have to kind of switch to the ultra wide, and usually you lose something. So this has that big sensor that's an ultra wide. It's got 2 telephotos, although one is more of a portrait lens, really, kind of more like the Xiaomi 13 Pro, right? Where it's like a 3.2x, telephoto. And then there is, I think, a proper 5x telephoto. So it's an interesting arrangement. And of course, I think the phone looks gorgeous. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, like I have a thing for the fake leather back on these phones. And I like the fact that, the pod is so big that they had to even raise the back of the phone a little bit, kind of like at the tail end of it. So, I'm hoping to get one. I've requested one. I did get the 13 Pros. There's a good chance that
Same.
Xiaomi will send me the Ultra because they know I love photography. I don't know. I cannot wait for this. I've seen Ben Sin's video, over at XDA.
Yep.
Well, he did the video for his own channel, but the point is he took it for a spin for a day in Beijing during the launch, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Like this has got me so excited. And the other 3 sensors, folks, are 50 megapixels. One over.
Yep, was just gonna say that.
Okay, you go ahead. No, tell the audience. This is great.
So, first of all, I wanted to just say it gives me some point and click, point and shoot camera vibes, the look of the back, like especially with that waist part that you mentioned behind the camera sensors. And yeah, you're right, these fake leather bags. Like, I was really skeptical about it on the Vivo X90 Pro, which has a similar design. But it basically sold me on this idea, and it's like much better than these fingerprinty glass bags that we have on way too many phones. And you're right, all 4 lenses have more than 50 megapixels or 50 megapixels. Like, I think the primary sensor has 50.3, at least that's what I'm seeing in the spec sheet. But let's call them 50 MP sensors, all 4 of them. And yeah, that's like, you're basically not losing any quality resolution wise, no matter which sensor you use. I mean, obviously the images aren't 50 MP at the end, but like, you have about the same pixel binning and about the same quality.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great experience. And I'm looking at the specs here on GSM Arena, the database of all things. So we've got OIS on all 3 of the main and the 2 telephoto lenses. We're getting 1 over 2.51 inch sensors, as you mentioned. They're pretty big, not quite as big as obviously the main sensor. But the other thing that strikes me here is the f-stops on these lenses. They're insane. Like, the ultra wide and the first telephoto both have an f over 1.8 lens, right? So they gather a lot of light. And then even the 50 megapixel telephoto has an f over 3.0. Like, most telephotos in the 5 point something range are usually f over 4 something at the best, right? So this is a huge step forward, and I welcome this. And dual pixel AF on everything. But here's the thing that's kind of funny to me, right? And this is something that I'm going to keep telling the Chinese manufacturers they need to fix. Only 1080p video recording on the selfie camera.
Right.
Now, you're going to say, who cares, right? Because you don't buy that phone for that. But look, it's a flagship. Come on. Like, I think it's ridiculous that only Samsung, Apple, and an occasional phone from China has, 4K 30 or 4K 60 in the front. A lot of people love their selfies. A lot of people, I can see somebody being really into photography, making some really beautiful shots with this phone, and then someday just wanting to do a TikTok, of themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
At the mall. And then, you're going to say, well, TikTok's not 4K, but that's not the point. If you start with bigger, you can crop it. I often crop my selfie videos for my reels because I realize I didn't frame it just right. And then I'm losing something, right? If I'm shooting at 1080. So I feel like that's kind of like, I just want to point it out because it's just so kind of funny, right? It's like, here we have this crazy camera system in the back, and in the front it's like, whatever, 32 megapixel f over 2.0, 0.7
Totally
microns.
with you there. Like, I'm personally not somebody who likes shooting selfies, neither videos nor photos, but something I'm looking out for as well in my reviews, because I know that a lot of people buy their phones, like, they're going to end up using the selfie camera more than the cameras on the other end. Maybe not the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, but like there are many people who buy phones to take selfies.
Absolutely, this is critical today, even on a folding phone, because yes, you can put it in like this, folded mode and use the better cameras, but not everybody feels like. Sometimes you're doing a video call, right? And why should your video call be worse, right? So anyway, this is a minor gripe. It's not going to stop me from buying this phone if they make a global version, which I think they will be. That's the only thing I'm a little concerned with right now. They've requested reviewing it, but if they send me the China version, there's always going to be some limitations there. But I'm not going to say no because I want to try those cameras. Of course, the specs are insane. Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, lots of RAM and storage. We've got, an incredible LTPO AMOLED with 2600 nits peak, the brightest display on any phone ever, according to Xiaomi. Like, that's insane. Do you know how bright that is? That's bright enough that in California, with the sun shining right on my phone, it'll feel like I'm in my bedroom with the lights out. Like,
I wonder how much
exactly
power
what
it
it's going to look like. It's probably can only do it for like 30 seconds because after that, it's probably bad for the display. But look, it's amazing. You saw this other spec: 90-watt wire charging, 50-watt wireless charging, 10-watt reverse wireless. That's unreal. That's not the first phone with these things. Obviously, we've got 240-watt, more than that now, 300-watt charging. But the point is, this thing has everything. Stereo speakers. Oh my God. And look at how good this thing looks.
Yeah, for sure. And like with the charging, like honestly, I don't think we need much more than a full charge in under 40 minutes, under 35 minutes. Like when I've tested phones that have these super fast charging, I'm basically just plugging them in while I have breakfast and then I'm good to go for the rest of the day. So like, I don't think we necessarily need to go much faster. Of course, it's nice to plug it in and it's finished charging in 2 minutes, but like, yeah.
So what do you think of the price? Of course, the prices for China, I always like to say add about, 10 to 15% to get a North America or Western European price, right? Right now it's 800-ish euros roughly, probably more like 1,000 euros by the time it hits your shores in Berlin. And by the time it hits my shores, not officially, right? But if I can buy it on Amazon, it's as official as it gets for us, right? That we can buy anything on Amazon. Like, people always ask me, like, why do you always tell me about those Pocos and those Redmis and those Realmes? And I'm like, because in the US, you can just buy them on Amazon. Like, you just can. They're there. It takes a few months, right? Because you don't get them right away. But like, if you want a Note 12 Pro Plus from Redmi, which is a great phone for the money, it's like $400 awesome phone. Well, it's not on Amazon yet, but I bet you by September, you'll be able to buy it for $400 US. You won't get a warranty. Not all the 5G bands will work, but it's a great phone. Buy that instead of like a Moto G or something, like that's my theory. But anyway, I think the price is actually pretty reasonable when you consider the Galaxy S23 Ultra sells for $1,200 US. I think this is amazing. Like, I have no complaints. I want this phone. I just want it.
So one note on the pricing, like I think it will be substantially more expensive in Europe because they sell the Xiaomi 13 Pro for 1,300 euros.
Oh, you're right. So that's a lot more money.
Yeah. So like, that's why I'm just thinking it's going to be more in the range of 1,600. You've got to like sell it as an upgrade. You can't like just make it 100 euros more expensive. Like then the Xiaomi 13 Pro is like, what's the point of the Xiaomi 13 Pro? So I think it's going to be like prohibitively expensive over here, but we'll see. Like, we don't have anything official on that yet.
No, and I'm only looking, just so you know, the 800 euros is on GSM Arena, so obviously it's just an estimate. It's not, checking
for sure.
Okay, here we go. The Verge story that I linked to in the email I sent you says the starting price is $873 US in China, and the maximum fully 1 terabyte is the maximum storage. 16 gigs of RAM is 1062. So I think you're right. We're looking at probably 1,600 euros and probably 1,600 US dollars, or maybe a little less because somehow the US manages to always get phones a little cheaper than Europe. Especially in this case, it's going to be.
I mean, you have to add your taxes.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, Xiaomi's Amazon store sets the price and they're generally trying to be pretty competitive. So it's not like an official manufacturer price, right? It's like kind of like an Amazon store price, if we even get that on Amazon. But yeah, what do you think of this kit that some of the folks in Beijing that went to the launch event received? That you slide it's a case and it lets you put standard filters on the lens, and it lets you put a grip with Bluetooth. It has a zoom wheel on it and a double detent camera. But oh my god, I want it so bad.
Yeah, I mean that's just what I mentioned. Like even without that grip, it kind of this big camera on it is like really reminiscent of like these point and shoot cameras, and like with the grip on it, it's like really basically that. Like with the extra accessory, it's like it's a camera. Like it's a camera with a phone attached to it, basically. So I love it.
Yeah, so I love it too. And how can you not love this? Like, I guess people who don't take photos don't care. But
I mean, everybody takes photos, and if you just take it with you on a vacation, then you don't need to, like, nobody carries a point and shoot camera anymore. But like, then you really have a proper point and shoot camera experience.
I know, but I think most people just hit the shutter button on their iPhone. This is America. I mean, I'm in Canada right now, but in North America, people just don't care, Manuel. They just like when you read the reviews, and I can't, and I'm not trying to be mean. Like, for example, Alison at The Verge, who does a lot of their phone reviews, she's a good friend of mine and she's amazing. But she's realistic. She's like, look, I'm a parent. I have a kid. Like, my only concern when I take a photo is that it comes out exactly when I hit the shutter button and that there's no motion blur. And, you and I don't care about that, right? Like, we're going to take our time. We're going to frame the shot. We're going to look. We're going to proportions, color, lighting, right? Like, we're camera nerds, okay? Let's be real.
I mean, I do both, to be honest, because when I want to take a picture of my cats, and yes. I like, if you look at my reviews, I've started really adding a lot of pictures of my cats because these are quickly moving creatures that like aren't aware that there's a photo being taken of them. And like, these are the kinds of shots you really want to nail because they do something goofy and you just want to nail this kind of stuff. And if the phone that you're reviewing doesn't do that, then this is going to be the experience a lot of people are going to have with it. And that's not good.
Yeah, and I also like to do street photography or like do candid shots and stuff. And this has a mode for that actually, which is really great because you can set the two zoom extremes that you want to shoot at and switch between the two really quickly, which means that you can like on the spot just go, okay, this is the shot I want and shoot it. But I'm feeling like, we take a little bit more, even when I take a photo of of my friend's dog or something, I try to frame it. I try to, like, this is in part of what I think when I do a photo. Like, it's not. Oh yeah. So, I feel like we're a little outside of the bounds. And at the same time, you can't fault the Pixel and the iPhone for being so quick with their shutter, for being so good at computationally reassembling the series of pictures that it took in that rough time frame to create a photo with less blur, right? And I think that's one of the things that you can't even do with a regular camera unless you're shooting at 1/4000 in low light and you have enough glass and enough sensor to capture that without noise, right? So I don't know, I'm excited about this phone. I just feel like even the Pro is like, the only thing that disappointed me on the Pro was that it's a boring looking phone. I do not like the industrial design. I think it's terribly ugly, actually, compared to, when they came out with the 12S Ultra last year. I was like, oh yeah, they're finally coming out with a design language. I even have the 13 Lite, and I think the 13 Lite looks really good. But the 13 Pro, so that's my only gripe, and that's not going to stop me from using the phone. I love it. I took some incredible photos with the phone when I was in Portugal. I went to a Michelin star restaurant and I took photos of the food in low light.
Nice.
And it's just like amazing photos. But, at the same time, I was waiting for more, and this is it. This is really what I was waiting for. This is delivering. I have the 11 Ultra as well from the year before, and I didn't find that very pretty either, but it was impressive at the time in terms of imaging. But 1 inch is changing the game, between the Oppo Find X6 Pro, all the Xiaomis, the Vivos, because there's the 90 and there's the X90 Pro Plus as well, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot out there right now that I think is super exciting in terms of imaging. It's kind of like a revolution, and everybody's like, "Oh, phones are boring, and there's nothing new." Like, pay attention. Like, of course, there's nothing new. You should just keep buying a Galaxy or an iPhone.
Yeah, and I mean, it also doesn't help that a lot of these phones officially don't come to the US. Like you mentioned, you can relatively easily import them, but like people are going to be reluctant to do that, and they're just only going to see the iPhones and the Samsungs in the US. Like this is what you're mostly going to see, and I mean it's the same here in Germany. To be honest, most people just stick with these two companies.
You can't blame people here, at least, for that, because I can walk into an operator store here in Canada or in the US and say, I want the S23 Ultra, which we all know is a very solid phone. Like, I like it a lot. I have one. And you can walk out with it for free by trading in like an old S10 you have floating around, It's like, at that
very
point,
jealous.
Right? I mean, the thing is, it's like we're looking at 1,600 euros for this phone out of your pocket for a phone that is going to be obsolete in 1 year when they come out with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I mean, not obsolete, but right at the pace things are going. My 11 Ultra that I have, which is a review and it's not mine, but it's obsolete compared to this. Like, why would I even bother using that if I get this one, right? So that's the thing. That's the problem. It's never-ending progress, which is why I don't buy phones, Manuel. Ever. If I don't get a phone, I don't get a phone. I don't get a phone. Like I don't have an X90 of any kind. I wish I did. I've asked for one. I don't have one. I don't have the Oppo Find X6 Pro either. For some reason, they don't want to send me one. I'm like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm sad, but every week that goes by, it becomes less relevant, not only because it's less newsworthy, but because something else is going to come along. Xiaomi 13 Ultra.
The one phone that I might be like really interested in buying would be the Pixel Foldable, but we'll get to that later, I think.
Well, actually, let's do that now because that's a very big segue. There's other phones, but I'm really kind of curious to hear about this because you wrote a story, co-wrote it with Will. Right? And we have additional information now. We have some pretty solid leaks on price and availability for both the Pixel Fold and the Pixel 7a. So you wrote this. So tell me, what do we expect? What are we looking at here exactly?
Right. So let's just start at the beginning. So the Google Pixel Fold is going to be a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 style phone, which means it's going to be opening like a book, with the difference being that it's going to open into a landscape mode view rather than a horizontal view, which
it's more like the Oppo Find N series, the N and the N2, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But like I think like the Z Fold 4 is like the default book style phone that you think of when you first
for sure
hear of it. Right, and it's gonna open like that, and at this point we basically know everything about it. Like Prossel just recently had a video where he basically spilled all of the details that you can expect, including availability and pricing, which is looking like it's going to be 1.8K in the US, which is right up there with the with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. And quite the interesting move, because I was thinking Google would try to undercut the competition with this one. But no, they're going like right into this premium sector. And that's despite like some design issues I see with this phone. Particularly, it's going to have bezels at the top and bottom when you unfold it. So these bezels are big enough to have the selfie camera in the bezel rather than in the display. And yeah, I personally don't mind, but when you compare it with the competition, they all basically offer phones or foldables that don't really have any bezels to speak of. And that's going to be a disadvantage for Google. And I think the one thing that we really don't know too much about yet is how how the hinge will behave. So like, we don't know if it's going to be a very visible crease in the middle, like on the Honor Magic VS, or if they've engineered it in a way that there's going to be barely any, and we don't know how well it will be able to keep in between positions. So, for example, the Phantom, the Techno Phantom Wing Fold, I have that here for review right now. It's like the foldable that doesn't have a crease like almost at all, like it's almost completely invisible. But the disadvantage is that you can only fold it completely flat, or you can only completely close it. You can use its kickstand. Like there's an case included with a kickstand where you can like basically force it into a half-open position. But like, come on, that's a workaround. So that's going to be very interesting to see, like how the Pixel, how it's going to perform in the end when we like really get our hands on it. Like I'm sure the software will be awesome, because basically right now Samsung and all the other manufacturers, they still have their own solutions for the folding form factors. They still have their own solutions to create these multi-window experiences, even though Google provides some of these tools with Android 12L and Android 13, of course. But like really seeing how it will be powered by Android itself rather than software built by the manufacturers, that's going to be really interesting. And I hope that will also mean that we'll see a lot more third-party apps finally jumping on board with these kinds of things, because that's one thing you really notice when you use a foldable phone. Like a lot of apps just aren't great for folding phones. It's the same with tablets. Like basically, if you've used an Android tablet, you know how the unfolded foldable screen will look like. And I really, really hope that this is going to be something that's going to push third-party developers to adopt these form factors better again.
Yeah. I can see the bezels from the photos on your article. I've been following this obviously a little bit because I'm a Pixel user, and I'm not a huge folding phone, at least not the book style. I like the flip phones more. But I'm sure Team Pixel is going to hopefully hook us up. And I might make that my primary phone just to try it out for a while. But I have some concerns immediately. Obviously, the software, as you said, is going to be great, but I'm not a fan of Tensor. I never have been. I don't think they're going to fix that. I think that Google needs to do what Oppo and Vivo are doing, is create a co-processor that is an NPU that is optimized for their AI stuff and add it to a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 something and call it a day, or add a Dimensity 9200. Like they did in the past, basically. I am so done with Tensor. And a lot of it has to do with battery life efficiency and 5G reception performance, radio performance. Side by side with any Qualcomm device, the battery life loss and the signal loss are literally visible. And it doesn't stop me because there are so many other good things, right? Like the software, the imaging experience. But Google could do so much better, especially since essentially Samsung is making their phones now, right? It's all Samsung parts, Samsung displays, Samsung. Like, drop this whole Tensor, or keep the Tensor, but make it a co-processor. Just have it in there, fire it up when you need it, call it a day. That I believe they could do properly. And that's just my opinion. And people are going to say, well, how's that more efficient? I'm like, well, look, I've used the Mary Silicon equipped phones for a while, and they don't seem to use more battery because they have a Mary Silicon chip. Okay. Like, you're going to say, well, how often do you fire up the camera? Well, even if I do a whole afternoon of shooting on like my old Oppo Find X5 Pro with Mary Silicon, I don't notice a degradation in battery life. Like, and that's the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. It's already kind of crap. So that's my biggest concern here. And of course, it's a first gen product. And every time Google does a first gen product, like, hello, Pixel Watch here. Like, it's great. I still wear it. I love it. But man, it's compromised. Battery life sucks, etc.
The reason why I stopped wearing it is because of the atrocious pairing process when you want to set up a new phone, because I switch phones too often and I don't want to deal with that.
Exactly. Well, that's part of the reason.
I get what you're saying with the tensor chip. Like, it really has problems. Like, for me personally, I've never really had big connectivity issues. But what I've been noticing recently, like especially comparing it to other flagship phones out there, when I use it to navigate public transit here in Berlin with City Mapper, it's like basically this Google Maps like service that runs in the background and tells you when to get off a train. And I'm going on a, 2-hour journey, like 1 hour there, 1 hour back, and I've lost half my battery life. And I compare that with like the Honor Magic 5 Pro. It's like 20% at best. And that's like, something needs to be done in the battery area here.
My concern with reception is not that it doesn't work. Like, I still get signal, it still works, but the bars are lower, clearly. And also, it gets hot. If my signal is poor, the phone gets like very warm in my hand, really obviously warm in my hand. And no Snapdragon or Dimensity phone does that. None of them. Like, I've got the Oppo, the flip phone here, Dimensity 9000 Plus. The only time it'll get warm is if I start firing up a game on it for 5 minutes or more. It never gets warm. In my parking garage with 1 bar of 5G underground, it doesn't get warm. My Pixel, the moment I step in that parking garage, my pocket gets hot. Like, that tells you it's poor design. There's a problem here. And the problem is very simple. I hate to be that person to say it, but Samsung doesn't know how to make a radio to save its life. That's the problem. That's why I want a Qualcomm chip or a MediaTek chip in there, because the radios are so much better. And, communication is the key to a smartphone. That's a critical part. Like, I can live with slightly lower performance, like absolute benchmark performance on the phone, because I don't play games. I just want it to feel nice and smooth. And for that, I have no problems with the Pixels. So tensor is not an issue for that. It's more the power consumption, as you said in your example with the Subway, and the just quality of the radio, right? And I thought it was just maybe, because I was in the US with T-Mobile, and there are some areas that are a little weak in San Francisco. But now that I spend my time halfway in San Francisco and halfway in Vancouver, Canada, I'm seeing the same exact problems with, TELUS here, different carrier, different SIM card, different, like this is not a specific to one situation problem. This is a problem with the Pixel lineup. And I had the same problem with my old Pixel 6 Pro. I saw the same thing with the 6A. It's just like, I'm so sick of the tensor chip. I just want it gone. Sorry. What benefit does it bring to the table? Like, are you going to say, oh, what a camera benefit? Sorry, but Samsung and Apple are able to do just as well with other, not even that. Look at what Oppo and Vivo are doing with their custom ISPs. Look at what Xiaomi's doing, right? No.
Like, I was basically, for a while, I was saying Pixel phones are like the phone to get if you want great photos, but this year changed that for me, really. Like, with the Xiaomi 13 Pro, with the Vivo X90 Pro, both of these phones, like, they outperform the Pixel in certain categories, and they're like really, at this point, they're consistent enough to like beat the Pixel, because Pixel phones used to be really great with their consistency when it comes to photography. But for me, the Xiaomi 13 Pro and the Vivo X90 Pro, both of these phones, they were basically as consistent as the Pixel. And like, Google is losing its edge here. Which might not be the biggest deal in the US, where like these other phones aren't officially sold.
Yeah, because we don't
But
have
like,
them. Yeah.
yeah, but like it's still like you still wanna like look at the industry at a whole, right? Like Google may be a US company, but they have like so much business in other countries as well. And same goes for Pixel phones, same goes for all of the other business things. So like, yeah, they should be able to compete with phones in other markets.
So let's wrap up this Pixel conversation by talking about pricing and availability on that Pixel Fold you discussed. And also because now we know, of course, on the Pixel 7a. I'm hearing that some of our colleagues are starting to get their Pixel 7a. So I know that it's very close. I'm expecting to hear something from Team Pixel at any minute now. I'm going to I/O. I've been invited. I'll be there in San Francisco. Well, it's actually in Mountain View, but I will be there. So what are the prices? 1,800, you said. Availability?
Yes, let me just pull that up real quick.
Okay.
Right, so availability-wise, so John Prosser had a leak on Friday, the 21st, and he basically said that basically gave us a timeline of when things are supposed to happen. Like Prosser has a mixed track record with Pixel stuff. We need to say that. But like I wouldn't be surprised if it plays out that way, especially because I think I've heard these rough numbers before. He says that we will see a teaser on April 26th, like before Google I/O, which sounds kind of weird because why would they drop a teaser like right before the show? But yeah, I mean, it's not the first time they've done that. Like they've done it with the Pixel 6 series. I think they released first pictures and first videos in like August, and then the full phone launch was in October. So like they do that, but like so close before I/O, after they've kept it under wraps for all this time, strikes me as weird. But yeah, let's just take that, and then basically the announcement is going to be during Google I/O on May 10th. Right. And that's when pre-orders are supposed to start at the Google store only. And then 20 days later on May 30th, the pre-orders are supposed to start in all kinds of other shops, including carriers. Okay. And then on June 27th, it's supposed to be finally available.
Launch day.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what are we looking at for the Pixel 7a here? So May 10th, actually. It looks like they're going to be
shadow
launching
dropping it, I think they called it.
Like dropping it right on May 10th. It'll be available right away for $499. So $50 more. But look, it has all the things that we're missing from the Pixel 6a. Wireless charging. I mean, supposedly.
Supposedly face unlock.
Yeah, so why do you need a Pixel 7 again?
Good point, right?
Right, like 90 hertz, everything's there. Maybe the back will be plastic like the Pixel 6a was. And I don't care.
Which I wouldn't mind, to be honest.
It didn't matter to me too much. Yeah, so I mean, look, let's stay tuned here. I'll be there. I'll let you know. Hopefully I get one. But I'm excited about with these phones. I think, there's a lot going on here. Let's move on to some other phones. Speaking of folding and flip phones and stuff, which we talked about, and Vivo, which we talked about. Vivo finally officially in China launched their X Fold 2 and X Flip, which is basically kind of interesting because, BBK Group obviously just did the Oppo Find N2 book style and the Find N2 flip style. I mean, not just, but like in the last 3 months. And of course, it's like the what I call like the ROG division of BBK Group, because they're the only ones still doing interesting things that are really pushing the envelope and having their own little world is Vivo. Vivo is finally kind of dropping the other shoe, right? What's your take on these phones? Like just quickly, superficially, based on what you see in the specs and everything.
Yeah. So what I really like about the Fold 2 that they're showing here is the fact that it's basically similar to how Honor approaches their folding phone, in the sense that the cover screen is really usable. It's 21:9 aspect ratio. This is something that I really love seeing, because like that's what I hate about the Galaxy Z Fold 4, that the cover screen is like so cramped, and this is great that phone manufacturers are moving to that. And based on the images that we're seeing here, it looks very, very thin.
Yeah.
Which is also great. And I kind of really like that. I think it's this fake leather back that it also has on the Vivo X90 Pro, which I really love seeing because that's something that just like it just feels better than glass to me, at least. It's just like something where I don't have to worry about even more fingerprints. And fingerprints are big problems on foldables, I've noticed, because you really touch them from every side. Whereas,
every side, yeah.
And it's for me, it's so hard to keep them fingerprint free because I hate fingerprints on my phone. So like this is great to see. And the Vivo X Flip, it really reminds me of the Oppo Find N2 Flip with its big cover screen. But I think their approach here is a little better because they have the screen seems bigger. I'm not sure if it really is at 3 inches, but because it's like a horizontal display, I like that more, I think.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think this is a more premium flip phone. I think Oppo was really chasing the Z Fold 4 and the affordability. But this, I think, I mean, it might, price-wise, you can't really compare. I'm just basing this on the specs, not the price, because it's Chinese price, right? But, look at the specs, right? It does have an OIS main sensor, which, as you know, the Flip N2 does not have. It has all the Hasselblad, but surprisingly, it doesn't have OIS on the main lens. Does it take bad photos? No, it's actually very good. But you notice it in low light when you have to open that shutter a little longer, etc. So this is welcome. Also has Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which I think, look, the Dimensity is perfectly fine. But if you are playing games or something, you know that the Dimensity 9000 Plus is more in the same league as the 8 Gen 1, not in the same league as the 8 Plus Gen 1 in terms of efficiency and overall performance. So minor thing, you're not going to play games on a Flip. In my experience, having benchmarked all the Flip phones, because I have, the Oppo and I have the Samsung, they drop very quickly in terms of sustained performance. They can't sustain after like 5 minutes. They're down to half, right? Like it's the worst basically for gaming. So you're not going to do that. But I still think it's nice to, if you may be doing a little bit of video editing or something, you need a little bit more oomph. But yeah, I think overall I'm impressed with what I'm seeing here and in both phones. And I do like the designs. I like that, particularly the design of the Fold. It looks good in the cameras. It's got that V2 imaging chip as well, just like the some of the and the T-Star coating on the Zeiss lens, OIS everywhere. It's got a good set of cameras considering how thin they have to be. So, I'm willing to make some compromises here because it's a folding phone. Just like, the Pixel Fold is going to make some compromises in terms of sensors. But yeah, this is good. This is, again, we're not going to see this. I don't know if Oppo is no longer selling in Germany. Is Vivo still selling in Germany? I think there was some controversy around that.
Yeah, they might be next on the ban list.
Damn. So, but I mean, it's the European Union. You can just go to the Netherlands or something and grab one, yeah?
Basically, yeah. That was like super interesting. Like I was on vacation recently and the airport in Copenhagen was like filled with OnePlus advertisements. Like every single screen was showing OnePlus advertisements. I'm like, wow, I haven't seen OnePlus in public in a long time.
That's amazing.
But one thing I wanted to ask you about, what you think of the battery in the Flip phone? It's a 4,400 milliampere battery.
Well, that's the same roughly. I think it's 4,300 on the Oppo. So that's actually a big differentiator for me on the Z Flip versus the Oppo. And so I assume the Vivo is going to be the same. You don't get wireless charging, but you get faster charging, wired charging. And more importantly, in my experience, you get at least about 15 to 20% longer battery life, which is nothing to sneer at. When I ran the benchmarks on the Oppo for PC Mark Work 3 battery life, the Z Fold 4 was about 11 hours and the Oppo was about 14. So, now those are the numbers for PC Mark. That doesn't mean screen on time. That doesn't mean continuous use. This is from they do a calculation from, I think, 100 or close to 100 to 20-ish%. So it's an 80% thing. But, if you have been following the benchmark from PC Mark, Work 3, and you look at other phones, you can give you an example, like the Galaxy S23 Ultra, I think is 15 hours. So you get a feel like when you're getting close to 15 hours on a flip phone, that's actually really good. So yeah, we're going to see a big improvement in terms of battery life on this thing for sure. Especially with 8 Plus Gen 1 here, right? Like that's a great chip in terms of efficiency.
That's what kind of concerns me about the Samsung's flip phone, because that's really the biggest point of complaint I hear from everyone using it: battery life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough compromise, right? If you remove that wireless charging coil, you get more space. You can put a slightly bigger battery that might give you that 10% extra. But in a market like in North America, where almost everyone has a car with a charging pad, and they want to use Android Auto, and it, as you know, kills your battery. You really need to charge while you're connected. So of course you can do it wired, but that's a hassle, right? One of the wonders of wireless Android Auto is you can literally leave your phone in your pocket and everything works, or you can just put it on the pad, keep it charged. And even some cars remind you when you leave the car now and you leave it on the pad, it tells you on the display, like a little red thing flashes and says, hey, don't forget your phone. It's really cool.
That's cool.
So, I think also at this price point, you have to have wireless charging. I'm sorry, like I'm one of those people. It's like you spend a certain amount of money, I need everything. So I want Samsung to find a way to put bigger batteries, but still, keep wireless charging on their folding phones. Let's see what happens here. I want to move on to very briefly mention that last week, I forgot to say this, but ROG, Asus gaming division released the ROG Phone 7, which is exactly what you think it's going to be. It's a gaming phone. It is essentially the same as last year's Phone 6, but it was in Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It's a beast. It's got huge battery, incredible performance, very good, sustained performance. Does not throttle after use for a while, which is what you need in a gaming phone. And honestly, I always review the Red Magics because they send them to me, and Asus never sends me their gaming phones, even though I've played with them. Friends of mine have them. I would always buy the Asus. If I was a gamer, I'd spend the extra money because the software and the imaging on the Red Magics are always so terrible. But, my Red Magic 8 Pro review is up right now. I'm not going to mention too much. Go check it out. The link will be in the show notes. It's on hothardware.com, where I do most of my phone reviews. And you'll see that I was very impressed with the hardware. I mean, other than the camera performance, which is more of a tuning and a software issue because the components are actually okay. And of course, the software being very, it's not buggy too much, but it's very poorly translated and it's quirky and you can tell it's not polished, right? It's like, and you'll never get updates. Like who knows what's going to happen with that. But the hardware itself this year particularly is super impressive. It is perfectly rectangular. Everything about it is square. And the bezels are so small, like the entire front screen is one perfect rectangle. I think the thickest bezel is at the bottom and it's 2 millimeters, and that ones on the sides are 1.15 millimeter, and the one at the top is 1.3 something. So you look at it, and it's got an under display camera. So you look at it and it's just screen, just like you're holding literally a screen in your hand, and it's like amazing. And you're going to say, well, Samsung and Apple have very even bezels, but they're still bigger. And this really does feel like the future, like you're just holding a display in your hand. So that's kind of the thing about this phone.
I'm looking at your pictures right now. Yeah.
Crazy,
what
right?
I noticed about the back, about the Red Magic 8 Pro's back, like this is basically how I imagined the Nothing phone would look like based on based on the earbuds, because the earbuds are like properly transparent, and this has like this transparency effect look, and I don't know, like this is basically what I thought we would be looking at.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly the hardware, like I have zero complaints. The build quality is superb. This thing costs $650 with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in the US. It supports US bands. It's sold and warranted here. This is a really, really impressive. If you just want performance, and you want a super smooth experience, you want everything else to be relatively, the speakers are good, it's got a headphone jack, like it's just a really solid phone. All the display is really good. Of course, under display selfie camera is not that great, as you can imagine, but you can't see it. It's not like the Galaxy Fold where you can see those little dots. Like I've looked with a magnifying, it's impossible to see. It's so well hidden this time around. It's definitely like a third or fourth generation under display from ZTE Nubia, which is the parent company. It's really, really, really impressive. But, again, I would still pick the ROG if it was my money, spend a little more and really now you're going to get bezels, but, you don't get to deal with an under display camera. And of course, same 6,000 milliamp hour battery. So, in that PC Mark Work 3 battery test, the Red Magic was 21 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The best battery life I've ever seen on a phone. It's insane.
It must be annoying, like in the process of reviewing it.
Basically,
it just sits there for 24 hours.
Forever. Yeah. So, it's, I think these gaming phones, it's not for me. I'm not a gamer, really hardcore. So I think, if you're looking for something and you want really one phone, just buy the Asus. Just look at the specs on this thing. It's amazing. It even is IP54, which the Red Magic has a fan, so it's completely not waterproof.
Yeah, right. Matt Schultz here at Android Police, he did a review on it, and we gave it we basically gave it our most wanted tag because it's really the gaming phone to get right now if you want to get a gaming phone.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive. So, I forgot that last week, so sorry about that, folks. Let's see what else we got to talk about. So we've talked about, some more US-centric news here. So very recently, OnePlus launched the Nord CE3 Lite in Europe. And there were rumors immediately that this would come to North America as the Nord N30. And it looks like those leaks are intensifying. And honestly, based on my previous experience with the Nord 20, which was a really good phone for the money, I have to say, we don't get the great pricing you get in some parts of the world, like India or even Europe, for those mid-range phones, like the $250 to $500 phones. We don't get that. We don't get a lot of options. But and mostly what we get is Moto with the G series, and they're really not that great for the money. So OnePlus is really disrupting that here. Like you can buy these also cheap TCL phones, but if you are, on a tight budget and you need a really good phone, OnePlus in North America is your go-to for kind of like budget to mid-range. And I think this N30, based on the specs from the 3 CE Lite, is going to be like, I think the one to get in North America when it's available, because it's going to be available through carriers and everything. So I'm excited about that. Keep an ear out. I'm sure we're going to hear something soon. And related to that, because it's BBK Group, the Realme 11 series is starting to kind of appear in many places, which is interesting because I just got the Realme 10 series like 4 months ago. I think in December is when they sent me the Realme 10 Pro and 10 Pro Plus. And now we have Realme 11. So, and of course the Pro Plus is supposed to have a 200 megapixel camera, which is like, wow. What's your take on all of this BBK Group madness?
I have to say that I'm like not that well versed in the Realme world, to be honest. But like based on what we're looking at spec wise, I think it's gonna be a good phone at a great price probably, because I think I did have the Realme 9 Pro or 9 Plus Pro or something, I think a year ago.
Oh yeah,
the
9 Pro Plus. It had a really good, it had an IMX 766 with OIS. It took really good photos. Yeah, I remember that.
I was really positively surprised by that. That was my first and only Realme phone that I tested. And I was like really surprised how much bang for the buck that offers. And it really basically made Realme appear on the map for me in the first place, as like something that I could really recommend people who want an affordable Android phone. And I'm sure that this trend will just continue with like the next phones. Like if you look at the specs, it has a 6.7-inch OLED displays with 120 hertz refresh rates, 5,000 milliampere batteries with up to 100 watt charging. Yeah. And plus a 200 megapixel camera.
So let me fill you in, because you had the 9 Pro Plus and the 10 Pro Plus, which I have, so they removed the OIS, but they went with a 108 megapixel sensor, a good one. And they did a thing where, you know how the iPhone and the Pixel 7 can do 2x lossless because they just crop, right? And they don't pixel bin, they just take the center of the sensor. So Realme was the first to do lossless 3x zoom with this sensor, this 108 megapixel, by cropping the center, and it was good. I took some incredible photos. Now, the lack of OIS hurt it a little bit in low light, but because it had pixel binning 9:1, it was actually not too bad. And as you know, Realme's imaging pipeline is very similar to OnePlus and Oppo's. It's actually pretty good. So honestly, I was very impressed with that phone as well. And so this Realme 11 Pro Plus is supposed to have a 200 megapixel ISOCELL HP3. That's like a pretty decent 200 megapixel sensor. So I'm wondering if they're going to do like what Samsung is doing on some of their phones with lossless 2x and lossless 4x, right? Where you're doing 16:1 pixel binning when you're on 1x zoom. Then at 2x you're doing 4:1 pixel binning on the crop, and then at 4x you're doing just the center of course the pixels are really small, so that you probably want to do that in daylight. But that would be really fascinating to me if they did that on a $300-ish phone, right? So that's what's, the rest of the specs pretty much are in line with the previous models. They've always had fast charging, a big battery, and AMOLED with 120 hertz. They've always been really solid phones all around with mid-range chips, but it's always the camera experience, at least on the Pro Plus and the Pro models, that have been, in my opinion, kind of punching above their weight, And that's why I have to mention these phones today, because even that OnePlus, right? The Nord 3 CE, whatever it is in light in your end of the world, you look at the specs, right? And it's like, wow, that's a lot of bang for your buck. Now, the only thing that I don't like about that phone is it's got an LCD, and I'm not a big fan of that. It's probably a decent LCD, it's probably IPS and everything, but for the price, especially here in North America, where we're starving for good phones between $250 and $500, like, we're not going to get the Realmes. So I'm actually really looking forward to us getting this OnePlus phone. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great phone, especially like in the US, where you're so carrier focused. Usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to avoid, right? Like, I mean, I personally always recommend everybody buy their phone unlocked. Phones are available unlocked. You can buy these OnePlus phones unlocked, but you can get it for free. You can probably get 2 of them for free by just walking into the carrier store and agreeing to like a 1-year extension or a 2-year extension. For most people, especially people on a budget, honestly, I can't be mad at them, because they have little money and they want a good experience, and this OnePlus phone is going to give them a good experience. So why would they pay upfront for the unlocked version? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? But at the same time, the carriers, the operators are incentivizing people to become, like, basically to be locked in. And that's the problem I have with it. It's more of a philosophical problem at this point. But I think you and I understand that, but the average person doesn't care. Even in Germany, they probably don't care, right? That it's locked.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really have locked phones here.
There's not. You can't by law, right? It's forbidden, is it?
Yeah, right. So like, you can basically get a phone on a contract for 2 years and then switch to something much cheaper. If you don't want to like pay 1,000 euros for the latest iPhone up front, you can basically just say, okay, I'm going to do that 30 euro contract for 2 years. And then you can basically switch to a 5 euro MVNO, and you're basically good to go. But like on the other hand, we don't have these super great upgrade deals that you get in the US. Like that's a disadvantage because the carriers can't lock you in like that. And so they actually have to sell you new phones and new contracts, and can't just keep you upgrading for free. So it's give and take.
Yeah, that's the thing that honestly, that's also, I think, a problem here because, Samsung's actually losing money on this. We see this every year, and I'm like, I'm not sure how they do it. I guess it's because they sell enough televisions and washing machines or something, that they can afford to lose a little bit of money there. But it's not sustainable, And Apple, I don't know how they do it, but I'll be frank. If I was an Apple user, and I like the iPhone, but I'm not an iPhone user. But if I had an iPhone and I had an Apple Watch, and I use that every day, I would probably subscribe to their plan of getting a new phone every year. Like, why not? Like, it's the transitioning between phones is so easy. Everything is kept. You get an encrypted backup with your passwords, and everything carries over. It just makes it so easy that I might as well upgrade every year. Whereas right now, even pixel to pixel, I have to log into all my things, and like it's such a hassle, right? And as you saw with the Pixel Watch switching over, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, I have so many things like, my Tesla, I have to repair the key for the Tesla. I have to repair the audio for the sound system. It's like you lose all of that, and it's just such a hassle. So
I set up my Vivo units from scratch all the time because like we've run into some backup issues at Android Police where we basically had to start a review over again with like a fresh install because the battery life was, for example, like super bad, and it turned out it was just a bad backup. So like I don't trust backups on the Android side anymore.
Right.
That's just
Yeah, I understand. Well, listen, Manuel, we should wrap up the show. Do you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet, your social media handles, of course, where you write, and all the other projects that you might be working on?
Yes, sure. So you can find me on Twitter, basically just my name @ManuelFornow. And that's basically it. And I'm not that active on Twitter, but like if someone adds me, I'll take a look for sure. And otherwise, you can find my writing at Android Police. I'm the Google editor. So I'm basically focusing on all the software releases and the Pixel stuff that you find there. And yeah, that's it. That's me.
Manuel is your Pixel guy on Android Police, so keep an eye on his awesome stories. Folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, that's TNKGRL, both on Twitter and Instagram. As Manuel suggested, if you want to chat with us about this podcast, talk to us on Twitter for now. I don't know where Twitter's going. I lost my verified status yesterday, and I don't really care, but I'm just like, it's such a disaster, this platform right now. But the reality is still the fastest way and the best way for you to stay in touch if you feel like you can be there. Instagram is where you'll find pretty pictures of phones and pretty pictures of cars and food and travel, all taken with phones. My handle is the same as Twitter. It's Tankgirl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character. Just drop the vowels. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, it's at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the big platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, everywhere. And if you want to rate or review the show, if your app lets you do that, please consider doing that. That way people can, just discover the podcast a little better. There's a couple of YouTube channels as well that you can subscribe to if you want to see some unboxing videos and some content. I haven't done a lot of videos lately. I'm a little behind, but stay tuned because I'll have some more soon. Basically, it's youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast and youtube.com/mobiletechmore. The first one's mostly phones and wearables and, personal audio. The second one is like all the other stuff like gadgets and car stuff and travel tech and home stuff. Yeah. So check them out. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the little bell, comment. You can comment about the podcast there as well if you want. If you don't, I want to use Twitter or something, I'll check it out. And if you really want to help this podcast along, if you really want to make this happen for me by, contributing in some way every month, Patreon is where it's at. There's a Patreon where you can get a video version of this podcast. You can see me and Manuel instead of just listening to us. You get it before the audio version. And generally, I don't edit it quite as much. So, if I something happens, like the FedEx guy shows up, I generally just leave that in there. It makes you feel like you're part of the story a little more. So if that's what you're looking for, go to patreon.com/tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. There's also a Discord server you can join and a bunch of other perks you should check out. So if you can help, I'd appreciate it. If you don't like Patreon, that's cool. There is a link in the show notes. You can click in it and it brings you to a PayPal donation button. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, that would be awesome. So yeah, help if you can. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Manuel, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast this week. That was really awesome.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We'll have you on the show at some point in the future again. And folks, we'll have a podcast next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.